Having just watched his charge disappear into nothing, Issue 10 opens with Skink shouting Ethan's name and rushing over to where he vanished. He charges into the same space, and like Ethan, he appears inside the underground's base. Ethan tells him not to do anything sudden. The guy who has an arrow trained on Ethan compliments his calm thinking. If either of them do something stupid, they won't live long enough to regret it. Ethan does indeed stay calm, explaining that he doesn't want to cause any trouble. He means the underground no harm. He's just looking for Ashley. But he will defend himself. Yellow energy flares around his sigil, suffuses his arm, and he generates the sword again. But he doesn't make a move otherwise. My name is Ben, and this is Comic Book Breakdown episode 18.7, Scion, Back from the Dead. The bowman doesn't even blink at the sight of a seemingly magical sword appearing from out of nowhere. He does ask, Ashley? You know Ashley? Carefully, Ethan pulls out the green jewel that Ashley gave him, explaining about it. He hands it over to the bowman, who lets his arrow go slack. Well, if Ashley trusts you, then that's good enough for him. He apologizes for the hostile reception, but they can't be too careful. He pointedly looks at Ethan's sword now, and Ethan bashfully dismisses it. Sorry, he apologizes. It's a long story. The bowman introduces himself as having taken the name Flitch. Then he asks if Ethan is who he looks like. And while Ethan does confirm that his name is Ethan, he doesn't say anything more about his identity. He does introduce Skink, stumbling over how to classify their relationship, though, finally awkwardly settling on friend. Desperately needing a change in subject, Ethan asks Flitch how they keep the underground hidden. And, given that this place is a hidden refuge of a slave race, Flitch just shows it to him. They have hologram generators which hide this place. It actually used to be the first and only free city in the East for the lesser races, back before it was destroyed. It's remote enough that no one stumbles upon it, but they aren't willing to take chances either. He starts to move away, gesturing for Ethan to follow. Behind Ethan, two of the guards lean over near Skink and tell him that he doesn't need to be someone's servant. Here, they're all free. Ethan's head is in panel, and the eye that we see is thinned. In anger? Or maybe suspicion? Did he hear their offer? Or is he just focused on Flitch? It's hard to say. Flitch and Ethan don't walk far. The platform that they're on leads to a second-floor balcony overlooking the rest of the building. Laid out before them is a large, church-like structure of stone and wood. Dozens of lesser races mill about on the floor. They all look tired and worn. Their clothes are dirty and tattered. Some of them carry a bowl of soup or stew. Flitch then leads Ethan down some stairs, explaining that more of them are arriving every day. If the war continues on, they expect the trickle to turn into a flood. Life here isn't the best, he admits, but it is still better than a life of slavery. As they walk, Ethan takes in the faces of those seeking refuge, witnessing their physical scars and their emotional pain. The sanctuary is a start, proving that a better life is possible for the lesser races, Flitch adds. They stop near a fireplace, where we are introduced to a female named Anil and her son. The child's father was supposed to meet them here a few days ago, but he was cut down by Prince Braun before it could happen. Flitch is referring, of course, to Nock, who was killed in issue 8. At the sight of Ethan, the child climbs into his mother's arms, asking why one of them is here. Anil berates Ethan for coming here. This is a place for the lesser races, not his kind. Ethan is clearly hurt by being mislabeled, and he does try to explain his position. His words fall on deaf ears, though, and eventually he just stops. Flitch tells him that the lesser races don't live very long in the East if they don't fear humanity. It's nothing personal. That's just how it is. Honestly, Ashley is the only human that they trust at all. Ethan looks at his guide. Where is Ashley? Flitch says that he doesn't know. Okay, how about when she'll be back? Settling against a wall, Flitch replies that it's hard to tell. Ashley comes when she can and leaves when she needs to. Disappointed, frustrated by this news, Ethan just takes it in for a minute. Flitch studies his expression. "You aren't here to help us, are you?" he asks quietly. Ethan looks at him. Another thin refugee walks past them, their child strapped to his back. Ethan hesitates for a moment, then he lowers his head. He really needs to speak to Ashley. Flitch starts to walk away. He can't help him then. Ethan rushes forward, touching Flitch on his shoulder armor. He needs to understand. It's not that Ethan doesn't sympathize with their cause. He absolutely does. But he came here to avenge his brother. Braun cut his throat and let him bleed out into the mud. He was hoping that Ashley could sneak him back into the Raven Keep so that he could kill Braun and avenge him. Flitch just stares at Ethan for a moment. "So, you want Ashley to sneak you into the keep so you can kill Prince Braun? Wow. You don't know Ashley very well, do you?" Taken back by this reaction, Ethan says that no, he doesn't. This doesn't surprise Flitch. Ashley is a very private person. He doesn't know if or when Ashley is going to return, but he won't throw Ethan out. This is a sanctuary, after all. How comfortable he'll be staying here, Flitch can't say. Ethan doesn't take him up on this offer, though, saying instead that they'll leave. Flitch does offer them some basic supplies. It won't be much, as they don't have much to spare, but they will have something to get them on the road. Thanking him again, Ethan restates his sympathies. But he swore to avenge his brother. That just has to come first. Flitch understands that, right? Flitch hands him back his locator jewel. Then he turns away. Yeah, he understands perfectly. Then he leaves Ethan and Skink behind to stand alone in a crowd of lesser races. So, wow, that was a bit of a loaded scene. Mars set up two equally good goals for Ethan back in our first arc, helping his family prepare for the Raven invasion, or helping to free the lesser races from Eastern slavery. As we saw in that arc, Ethan chose to save his family, but guilt over not helping the lesser races has stuck with him. After Braun killed Artor, Ethan's priorities shifted. Saving his family became avenging his brother. And this motivation, well, it's a little less altruistic, right? There is honor to be found in avenging Artor, sure, but I can't help but think that Artor is dead. There is no helping him now. Meanwhile, the lesser races are being abused, and they could use help now. Mars has moved Ethan's heroic journey forward a step by making his family-based motivation slightly less altruistic and by bringing the lesser races closer to him emotionally. Until this issue, Ethan's associations with the lesser races has been Skink by his side and fighting Exeter. We haven't gotten to see how he acts or behaves towards lesser races that he doesn't know personally. We assume that he is nice and kind, but we haven't seen it yet. And the first time that we, and Ethan, are confronted by their suffering, really, is now. Ashley was our main connection to the underground before, and she is an attractive woman, so there's definitely a bit of a boner appeal in her request for help, but her pitch is mostly intellectual. The lesser races are suffering, we should help them. But here, Ethan sees firsthand the end result of the Raven's treatment. It is easy to forget thanks to indoor air conditioning and regular bathing, but the inside of that building probably stinks. The lesser races there were dirty, unwashed, many of them have fur, so imagine a dozen or so wet dogs trapped inside a building and funking the place up. Toss in some stale air, the buildup of breathing exhalations, and the inside of that building is probably hot, stuffy, and musky. Everyone looks dirty, everyone looks tired, and we are specifically shown a few members whose faces have been cut, the wound healed, but still scarred. This isn't an intellectual concept anymore. These are people. This is visceral and real, and it's right in front of Ethan. Topping it off, we meet Nock's mate and child. Ethan never got to meet Nock, only we as the audience did. Ethan didn't see Nock stand on a shot-out knee. Ethan didn't see him stand up to Broad. Ethan didn't watch Nock die. But we did. And now we see his family. Worse, we see how much Nock's death has impacted on them, with the child being fearful of humans and Anil being angry. Yes, this scene is meant to impact on Ethan, but it is mainly meant to impact on us. But do you, dear listener, want revenge on Braun for killing Nock? Or do you want to help liberate the lesser races more? Which motivation are you feeling right now? Because that's where Ethan is, caught in the middle of two right things. As his conversation with Flitch continues, we see that Ethan's ignorance of Ashley is kind of amazing. I didn't even think about the fact that Ethan is hoping that Ashley will help him kill her brother, but, that's what he thinks is going to happen. To be fair, Ethan doesn't know that they are family yet, and while Ashley clearly trusts Ethan to some degree, she did give him the location of the underground after all, she never told him about her family. Being the only human that the underground trusts, Flitch respects her wishes. From a story perspective, this is necessary. After all, you want this confrontation to be between Ethan and Ashley, not Ethan and some dude that we just met. But I can't help but think that Flitch could have said something to Ethan, maybe warn him that the relationship isn't what he thinks it is. It just seems really dangerous to withhold that information from him. I understand Flitch honoring Ashley's privacy, but it just seems like a bad move. Then we come back around to Ethan helping the lesser races or not, and he sticks with not. The decision clearly bothers Ethan. He doesn't look at Flitch when he basically says no. His face is hidden in his hair and shadows. And when Flitch is clearly upset by this, Ethan tries to explain himself. He is avenging his brother, yo. You get why that's important, right? And when Flitch says yes, the camera pulls out, showing us the crowd surrounding them both. Flitch is fighting to avenge his brothers, and his sisters, and everyone else lost to the Raven's cruelty. Ethan could be fighting for the same cause, and he could accomplish the same goal, the death of Braun, but he chooses not to, and it doesn't sit well with either of them. I mentioned before that Mars is having Ethan choose between two rights, but this arc is demonstrating that Ethan's current goal, avenging Artor, might not be the greater right this time around. On a smaller note, I do think it is important to look at Skink a bit here. Skink has displayed a number of odd abilities and some degree of, clairvoyance or farsight, cryptically saying things like, "This will make you stronger," or "Now is the time," about whatever situation Ethan happens to be in. And when the two of them arrived at the ruins, Skink said that something felt off. Things were not as they appeared. He could tell that something was going on here, but he also clearly didn't know about the hologram. When this issue opens, Skink shouts in worry after Ethan and charges into the underground blindly. He seems honestly as surprised by this development as Ethan was. So whatever Skink is, whatever he knows, he doesn't appear to know everything. I'm not sure if that's reassuring or scary, but there you go. Secondly, some of the lesser races encourage Skink to stay here. When Ethan introduces him, it is clear that he is not used to calling Skink his friend. He stumbles, he stammers a bit. He is trying not to say his servant or his companion, knowing the company that he is in, and so he ends up settling on friend, but it's also not Ethan's first choice. But when he is encouraged to leave Ethan, Skink doesn't bat an eye. He has no interest in staying here with the rest of his kind at all. Did Ethan hear that offer? Did it bother him? Does it entice Skink at all? We don't know. Skink doesn't say anything about this, Ethan doesn't ask him about it, and once we move on, so too do they. The little bit of personality that Skink was showing last issue appears to be gone, and that frustrates the absolute crap out of me. I like this scene otherwise. Ethan is well written, I like Flitch, I like the themes being explored, I like that we get a bit of a follow-up to Nock's story. I just wish that Skink was more than just scenery here. After changing clothes, washing up, and grabbing what supplies they could, Ethan and Skink are back on the move. The sun has set and it's become a dark, starless night. Twisted, leafless trees dot the uneven landscape. Short grass clings to life where it can in small patches. Annoyed at how their visit with the underground went, Ethan is grousing, mostly to himself. Skink says that he doesn't really like Ethan's new plan, which is to ride into the Raven capital, sneak into the keep, and then kill Braun. That seems really reckless. Ethan actually agrees with Skink's assessment, but he doesn't really have a better plan right now. They have no way of luring Braun out of the keep, so he's gonna have to go to Braun. Then he stops his mount. They might as well stop for the night. As they both dismount, he keeps on complaining. He came here to kill Braun, so that is what he's gonna do, no matter how he has to do it. What he does after that, well, we'll see. I just want to interrupt real quick just for a minute, because we were told at the start of last issue that the Ravens would be sweeping for communications. Yes, Kai outright stated it. So why not use that idea? Ethan could contact his family and say where his location is, but he could actually be laying a trap at that location. There is no doubt in my mind that if Braun learned that Ethan was in the East, just waiting to be pounced upon, he would jump at the chance to get him. He is way too proud to let someone else capture Ethan and steal his satisfaction. Plus, I think the real reason that Ethan is so okay with this rather dumb plan is because of how upset he is about the lesser races thing. He knows that he is making the wrong call, but he doesn't want to believe it, and so he is doubling down. He even says, I am here to kill Braun, so I will kill Braun no matter what. I have done this same kind of behavior in my own life, so I definitely can feel Ethan's motivation in this scene. He should listen to Skink, though, and think this through a little bit more. But that would be a much less compelling story, and I have been asking for higher drama and more stakes for the past few issues, so I guess we'll just let Ethan stew a bit. Having listened to Ethan's complaining this whole time, Skink gives him the sigil has changed your destiny speech, and moves off to collect some firewood. As he does so, Skink's orange eyes begin to glow in the night. Totally oblivious to this, Ethan leads the horses to some nearby grass, encouraging them to graze. They suddenly rear up and start fighting him, though, eager to escape. Ethan struggles to keep them calm, surprised by this kind of behavior. Since he is occupied, Ethan doesn't notice a low fog roll in. But he does hear a cold voice call his name. Ethan. Ethan turns. A transparent blue figure stands in the fog. Ethan's jaw drops. Because it's Artor. In his disbelief, Ethan releases the horses. They bolt, and one of them runs through Artor's ghostly form. Aye, Artor confirms. He is as he appears, but his time here is short. He doesn't really have time to explain how this is possible. But Ethan asks his questions anyways. He stopped believing in ghosts years ago, so how is this possible? With a shaking hand, Ethan tries to touch Artor, but, like with the horse, the form gives way under his touch. Quickly pulling back his hand, Ethan does understand that this is all his fault. Artor would still be alive if it wasn't for him. He has been haunted by guilt ever since his death, and apologizes to his brother. Artor says that he isn't concerned with that, though. The past is past. His concerns lie in the future. He moves forward and hovers a hand over Ethan's sigil. A great destiny awaits Ethan thanks to this. Ethan bends his arm up so that he can look at the brand. He repeats his usual lines regarding the sigil, stuff like he doesn't know where it came from, all it's brought him is suffering, and he doesn't know its limits. But this time he adds a new one. Can Artor tell him what it means? The sigil wasn't given to Ethan randomly. He was chosen for this, as were others. The sigil can do far more than just heal wounds and create swords, although it is up to Ethan to figure out exactly what it can do. Ethan will learn in time, hopefully before he is called upon. A great battle is coming, and that struggle will need the warrior that Ethan will become. Well, none of that is what Ethan was expecting to hear. What kind of battle are you talking about? What are you saying? He needs to know more, like who gave him the sigil? What do they want from him? Artur shakes his head. Those are not answers that he can provide. His time is ending, and he has already said too much. The camera jumps back, away from the brothers, and now we have Skink in the frame, although he faces the camera. Swathed in shadows, Skink's face appears emotionless, save for his eerie, glowing eyes. His word balloon connects with Artur's, indicating that he is either controlling the ghost or acting as a medium for him. In either case, that is a new development. The ghost's form begins to dissipate. Ethan reaches out for him. "Wait, stay, tell me more, tell me anything! Please, don't go!" But Artur cannot stay. As his form fades, he tells Ethan that the end of his journey is destined, but the route to it is his to choose. Ethan clutches at the wisps of mist, stumbling into a kneeling position. "Artur, please, will I see you again?" he asks desperately. But Ethan is alone. After a moment, Skink touches Ethan's back. Ethan keeps his head bowed, but he tells Skink that Artur was real. He was here. He seemed so real. Skink gently says that he was real enough. "So what in the
No swearing.
was that? Skink just summons the dead to do his bidding now? Like, Skink has done some weird, ominous stuff before, but this is a whole nother level of weird. This is an unexpected level of weird. Putting Ethan to sleep is one thing, maybe being clairvoyant is another, but using the dead to do your bidding is flooping different. You a
No swearing.
necromancer, bro? What is this? Oh, so okay, breathe. Let's look at this. Skink leaves Ethan to gather firewood, but he is clearly using that as a cover so that he can go do whatever this show is. That means that he is hiding it from Ethan. If Skink was just some kind of medium channeling Artur's spirit, I don't think that he would bother hiding it. I don't know if Avalon has mediums or not. I would personally think not, because Ethan states for a fact that he doesn't believe in ghosts, which would indicate that the people of Avalon are skeptics. But we don't know, not for a fact. It's not like anybody has said, "Hey man, you believe in mediums?" And the other person's gone, "Mediums? That's bullcrap." If mediums were a thing, I don't know why Skink would hide that ability, though. That makes it seem more like Skink is either controlling Artur's ghost or projecting some kind of illusion. And either of those options makes Skink a lot more manipulative than he has appeared to be before. Personally, I don't read this as a summoning. I don't think that Skink is pulling Artur back from wherever life goes after they have passed in Avalon. The Artur that I knew had way more personality than this guy. He would have greeted Ethan with a joke. He probably would have spooked Ethan, actually, and then been like, "What? Did you see a ghost?" This guy is stiff as a board. He definitely sounds like Skink. Plus, there's all the ominous stuff that he tells Ethan. The sigil wasn't random, there are more people who have them, and there's a conflict coming that he'll be needed for. These could just be things that you learned in the afterlife, like, "Hey, you're dead, here's the game facts to the cross-gen universe," but Artur's cold demeanor combined with that knowledge makes him seem very un-Artur. Skink, on the other hand, has always sounded this way and been vaguely prophetic regarding the sigil and Ethan's role with it. So, for my money, Skink has somehow cast this illusion in order to manipulate Ethan. Now the question becomes why? Why do this now? We know that Ethan is discouraged after meeting with the Underground. He's doubled down on his goal of killing Braun, but he is set on doing it in the stupidest way possible. Skink has voiced objections to this. So does this ghost help Skink's argument? No. Seeing and losing Artur again will probably just reaffirm Ethan's desire to avenge him. This conversation doesn't make Ethan rethink his goal or his methods. If anything, it's going to make him even more resolute. Unless that was the point. Maybe Ethan was waffling, having just seen the lesser races, so part of him is doubling down, sure, while another part of him isn't so sure. So Skink summons this illusion in order to poke that wound and stoke the fires of vengeance in Ethan's heart. In his role as companion and friend, maybe Skink does think that Ethan's plan is stupid. But maybe in his role as mysterious manipulator, maybe he wants this fight to happen as badly as it could for Ethan. That's very manipulative and cruel, but it's some personality at least, so I welcome this disturbing turn. This scene would also indicate that Skink has some connection to the bigger picture, maybe even ties to the creator or mentor. That is pretty exciting as well. I also want to take a moment to mention the coloring and special effects on Artur. The ghost was drawn by Jim Chueng, but rather than ink it in black and just leave it, Artur's line work is all white. This enhances the otherworldly feel and makes the figure stand out against the darker backgrounds and Ethan's more traditional, quote-unquote, realistic look. The ghost is also colored in light blues that fade to gray or white, again, giving him a very ethereal feeling. When the figure is physically touched, his form breaks apart like mist, which is a nice thing to do. I'm not sure if Artur was drawn on the actual comic book pages, or if he was drawn separately and then added into the scenes digitally, as some of the images could go either way, but they're pretty gorgeous regardless. This is still one of the best looking books that I've ever seen. We end this issue at the Raven Keep, where Ashley has returned home. She is greeted by the hunting dog Reaver, who calms at her touch. Ashley hopes that he's been well, and that Braun hasn't been abusing him. That's when Braun greets his sister, and standing behind him is Mai Shen. The siblings speak coyly about their meeting in issue 8. Braun confirms that he's told no one, but Ashley doesn't trust that he did it for her. She warns him to stay out of her way. Braun tries to play this off. Why, is my own sister threatening me in our home? For shame. And in front of our guest. Braun then introduces Mai Shen, who bows. She's honored to finally meet the absent princess. Ashley's eyes narrow. Yes, well, it seems like she might be needed here at home. These two dance with their words for a little bit as well, with Mai basically indicating that her allegiance might first be to Braun, while Ashley reminds her that they should all be loyal to the king first. How is father? Ashley asks her brother. He is just the way you left him. He's fine, Braun replies. Eager to see his only daughter, I bet. That gives Ashley a reason to excuse herself, and she leaves. Mai steps closer to Braun once she's gone. His sister is going to be trouble. This doesn't surprise Braun. She always has been. They don't need to worry about her, though, Mai reassures him. Once her plans for Braun are complete, they won't have to worry about his sister or his father ever again. Clearly, the biggest takeaway here is that Mai Shen has plans for the Raven King, for Braun, and Braun seems pretty cool with them. We haven't seen Braun with Mai Shen since her arrival, but she is hanging all over him here. Either they have gotten much closer since issue 8, or Braun has gotten way more comfortable with her physical touch. Given that Mars has been setting up Braun for a coup, I would not be surprised to learn that Mai Shen was involved with it. There's also clearly tension between Ashley and Mai in this scene as well. I think that Ashley is immediately suspect of any newcomer to the Raven Keep, and she is especially sus on anyone allying with Braun. That is smart, and indicates that Ashley is far more aware of Braun's cruelty and ambition, and its reach, than their father. We also see Reaver again, and he looks like such a good boy. I just want to give him so much scratchels. I would also like to mention that Ashley gets a new costume in this scene. This one is much more in line with the styles of her father and brother. It's all black leather with lots of white and red borders and a cape. It's actually kind of odd to see Ashley in this color scheme, as purple and red has been her signature style so far. Personally, I'm not really a fan of this look, but that is just my tastes, and I am still glad to see her outfits changing. I hate that superheroes are always in the same clothes, so it's great seeing Ethan and Ashley change outfits on the semi-regular. A few issues ago, I mentioned that artist Andrea DeVito did a pinup drawing of Exeter, adding that DeVito was new to the American comic book industry. Well, he then provided an Ashley pinup in another issue. I didn't mention it because it didn't matter to our story, but this particular issue features an actual comic from DeVito. I'm guessing that this was a test job to see how DeVito worked, and it is written by Ron Mars, penciled by Andrea DeVito, inked by Don Hillsman II, and then colored by Cesar Rodriguez, basically our normal creative team. This first part is 7 pages long, and it has a simple enough name: Bounty. We are immediately introduced to a new character, a cheetah-looking female member of the lesser races, wearing a few scraps of clothing, covering, the censored bits. She narrates our story, saying that she has heard all the stories about him. That he followed a runner into the sand wastes and brought back a corpse. That he killed an entire barbarian town up north because they took in a single escaped slave. Or that time that he hid on a boat and waited until it was out at sea just to sink it, in order to make sure that his bounty couldn't escape. All of it, just to make sure he got his bounty. As we're being told this, the Catwoman, who we'll learn is named Nyssa, is running through a jungle landscape. She leaps over a large chasm, but when she reaches the other side, she doesn't quite make it. Her claws sink into the ground and dig furrows as she starts to drop. At least, that is until a massive hand closes around her own and pulls her up. Exeter has caught her. All of those stories, the ones that people tell, they all sound like they can't be real, but she has seen Exeter with her own eyes. And Nyssa wouldn't doubt any of them. Exeter pulls her in, wondering what she would have done if he hadn't been here to save her. In answer, Nyssa scratches at his face. He drops her. She runs, using her natural speed and agility to climb up into a tree. As she does this, Nyssa's narration kicks in again. The lesser races have all wondered, where did Exeter come from? Why does he hunt his own kind? Some of them say that he was born free in the West and came here to hunt escapees. Others say that he is a native to the East, but that he killed his master and only stays free by hunting runners. Personally, Nyssa thinks that he has been a slave before. She says that you can see it when you were born one yourself. But now, he's the lesser race's boogeyman. Before Nyssa can get too far into the treetops, Exeter pulls out his axes. With 2 flooping chops, he fells the tree that she's in. Calmly, he walks to the canopy and moves some branches aside, finding a stunned Nyssa. This time, he grabs her by the neck. You were fine prey, Nyssa, but the ravens will pay very nicely for someone so highly ranked within the underground. Nyssa struggles, but this time, she is unable to do him any physical harm. How can you do this? She asks, settling for emotional damage instead. How can you hunt your own kind? Quote, how can you look at yourself in the mirror? End quote. Exeter pulls back a massive fist, and he answers, I don't own one. And then his punch knocks Nyssa out cold. I mentioned at the top that I think this scene is mostly a proving ground for new artist Andrea DeVito, and I think that stands. DeVito's artwork is a good match for Chueng's general style, sticking to realistic proportions and shapes with very little use of solid blacks. Both of their styles are very reliant on the colorists lighting a scene. They don't do much with shadows, which works fine here. DeVito's jungle is filled with leaves. There's rough bark on its trees with small, monkey-like animals scattering in Nyssa's wake. It is detailed and generally flows well. When Exeter grabs Nyssa's arm, he makes sure to have Exeter's arm twisted properly, keeping the continuity between panels. A lot of artists might have just drawn Nyssa hanging differently from Exeter's hand, or moved Exeter's hand between panels, hinting at movement, but DeVito just keeps things consistent. I love it. It's fantastic work. The story itself, though, is nothing special. A lesser race member is on the move and Exeter hunts them down. We have seen how determined Exeter can be before, so hearing Nissa's stories doesn't really add much. It does help to demonstrate the lengths that Exeter will go, and it is cool to see him getting solidified more in the lore of the world. He isn't just a bounty hunter, he is the bounty hunter, the one that everyone else fears. Mars, through Nyssa, does bring up some interesting questions about Exeter's background, something that I honestly hadn't considered at all up to this point. Where does he come from? Why does he hunt escapees? What's his relationship like with the Raven government? How does he feel about the lesser races and the underground? He clearly preys upon them, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he hates them or thinks what they're doing is wrong. Given that Exeter has shown up in 2 issues now, it is a good sign that he'll probably be getting more focus, and hopefully will be getting more answers. Things haven't really gone Ethan's way with this set of issues, but he continues to crawl towards the goal, the Raven Keep. Within it, Prince Braun and his vengeance. What lessons has he learned from his encounters with Exeter, the Underground, and Artor's ghost? He's got a magic sword, sure, and maybe some vague answers about his sigil, but is that enough to satisfy him? And is it enough to make him capable of killing Braun? Next week, Ethan reaches the Raven Keep as his plans reach their climax. Unbeknownst to him, so do the plans of Mai Shen and Braun. Ethan is ready for a fight, but this will not be the fight that he is expecting. Join me in a week for Comic Book Breakdown episode 18.8, Scion Rematch.
Everyone, there are a million podcasts vying for your time and attention, and I'd like to thank you for listening to mine. If you would like to get in touch with me, to share a concern, request a series, compliment me, berate me, whatever you like, send me an email at cbbreakdown@gmail.com. Otherwise, thanks for listening.